And that one's on our wall.
He had a dream to catch a 300-pound tuna fish. And he caught one and they put it on the scale and it was 299.14. Oh. And everybody said, spit on it. Would you like me to close that?
That would be nice, thank you.
Did someone arrange that, or did you put this together with flowers here?
Yeah, it was definitely arranged.
You did that?
No, Denise
Oh.
and Eddie.
Wow.
Dropped it by as a belated birthday offering. Yeah, Denise is.
She arranges.
Yeah, she's quite good at that. And she does it. She ranges between dramatic and spectacular. Never beyond those. I mean, always one or the other, you know. She's very good. Well, let's get quiet for a while. sitting in the silence like this is much more what song ought to be about than what we've been doing since we started this series of talks is really a class on living between two worlds, and we've said everything there is to say about that we're going to say this year. And there's really no sense going beyond that, because that's where the work is. The reason that came up is because that's where everybody is and that's where the work is, and I know that several of you have really dived into some of that material and are working with it. And those of you who aren't past that stage could, and it's all recorded and it's available on CDs, and it's really a piece of work, that we could spend a year on. You could take each CD and spend a month on it doing that work, because there's no sense going beyond that until that work is done, until we're in the world but not of it, I guess is the way Jesus described the final goal. When you're in the world but not of it, then you're not living between two worlds anymore. But most of us ping-pong between humanhood and God consciousness, or between little I and big I, or between thinking and not thinking. And what it is it's now a matter of discipline, of daily work, of bringing those thoughts to the fronts of our heads and doing the work, reminding ourselves, finding whatever tools we can find to keep reminding us on a daily basis or an hourly basis. I like Joel's comment that, if you do 10 30-second meditations a day, which would be 5 minutes of meditation, but 30 seconds every hour for 10 hours, you will get much more effect out of it than if you do one 10-minute meditation in the morning and one 10-minute meditation in the evening, because you will be coming back on an hourly basis to reaffirming your conscious contact with God. And obviously, of course, doing both would be even better, to start out the day with a 10-minute meditation or 5 or whatever we do, and then remember hourly to reconfirm, reestablish, to touch that consciousness. And of course that will transform your life. But in any event, I was interested this week, I was really led to do those 2 termite talks, and then I was really led to the living between two worlds, and I find myself now unled, which means that there's nothing more to teach. So I think the Tuesday night talks are going to completely change their structure for a while. People who want to do the work can buy the CDs and do the work. Instead of me talking for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or however long I babble on before we start, I think what I'm going to do is change these Tuesday nights into just open workshops where anybody can bring any question that they have about their spiritual practice or script work or kid work or relationship work or Joel they've been reading or Joel tapes or Robert tapes, anything else you've been listening to if I've been listening to it. And we can just talk about whatever things people want to talk about. And that's more the Westerners want classes and they want talks and they want to be given something which gives them the illusion that they're making progress, something they can label as making progress. And in the East, they're much more comfortable with sitting and being together, and they understand that the real teaching is done in the silence because truth can't be verbalized. And so in the East, they have what they call satsang. And sat means being or truth. And sangha is the spiritual community. So a satsang is a gathering of spiritual aspirants, often with a teacher, but it's a spiritual community. And the form they take in India a lot is just to come together and sit in the silence together, because that's where the real teaching is. It's just being in the presence and being in the communal consciousness that does the work. We get lifted and we never drop back quite as far, and we come together again and get lifted and we never drop back quite as far. So they come together and sit in silence until somebody feels to ask a question and talk about something. I know Ramana used to lay down on his couch and he'd read the paper, and people would come sit in satsang history with him, and he'd go through the mail, and some of it he'd read aloud, and then he'd get quiet again, and periodically some seeker would come in and ask him a question or want to get a blessing or something like that, but it's all very informal and very open and very unstructured, and we do so many different kinds of specific work here, and the students are at so many different levels that, I think that just having a wide open workshop, in which anybody can ask anything is probably the way to go right now, while the people that want to work with the living between two worlds do so. So, I think for the next, I don't know how long, since I never know what's going to happen, but for the next period of time, we'll come together on Tuesday nights as long as there's interest, and talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, rather than pursuing something that I'm led to pursue. And if nobody wants to do that, then it'll be empty here next Tuesday night, and that'll be fine too. Since there's one new person here, let me say to you that one of the rules here is that you don't believe anything I say. The purpose of this is never for anybody to believe what I say or anything like that. The only thing we try to do is understand what's being said here, and then we go out there and find out whether or not that's our experience. And this is true for the work in the workshops, and this is true for any of the talking about Joel's spiritual truths or Robert's spiritual truths or anything else that we talk about. The purpose of all this work is to have the experience. And when you have the experience, it's yours. And when you haven't had the experience, it's hearsay. Hope is nice. Belief is the next stage, but belief is useless. Belief is much more often wrong than right. Faith is just a little bit more vehement belief, but still there are an awful lot of people with an awful lot of faith and an awful lot of false things. So the only thing that has any value is your own experience. So, don't believe a word I say or anybody else says, but hear it, understand it, ask questions, find out what we're talking about. And when you understand it, then go see if it's true in your life.
So you were saying, we were talking about levels. You said so many people in her at different levels, and I found that when I say, well, I'm at a different level of spirituality, that just is a lie. And I was just talking to someone about that. So say, you know, like I was explaining to him the big book, like it goes so far, but then there's like a lot of people go to, you know, after they go through the 12 steps, they go to Christianity, or they just enlarge their spiritual life, but it's really not another level. And I pointed out, you know, all the principles are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get into the hierarchy of consciousness and the witness, and that doesn't even exist then, except in context.
Sure. Levels. You know, you can talk about level in the sense of the depth of your experience and understanding. And the way level usually comes into this framework is that you can define levels into the spiritual path, where the material concept would be the lowest level. And then understanding metaphysics and understanding using the power of mind would be the next level. And moving on to mysticism would be the next level, where you become aware of the individual big I. And then, you know, moving on to the one who witnesses all that could be called another level. So you can talk about levels. In truth, everybody is always fully realized. There never was anybody who wasn't fully realized. So in truth, there are no levels, of course, but
In context.
but there's no sense talking about that because you can't.
Right.
And nobody here is aware that they are the one, or they would be either on a mountain or in a cave, or teaching their own class, or, you know, having a different experience probably than sitting here. So level is just a way of talking about it. You know, the workshops we do are for people. Yeah, like you work the steps, you clean house, and you get clear enough that the reason the 11th step is 11th is because until you've done the inventory and cleaned house and made your amends and stuff like that, you can't get quiet enough to meditate. Okay, so now you're having a experience of meditating, but there's still a great deal you don't know about how it works. And that's why we've had classes here entitled How It Works. People don't realize that they're manifesting their own experience. They still think it's happening to them, and people don't understand that they have both spiritual aspects and human aspects, that they have kids, and they don't understand why it is that even though they've been sober 12 years, they're still throwing tantrums and breaking out in fits and destroying their relationships and their careers and stuff. And so we have work to deal with the apparently incremental process of converting from humanhood to realization. And the workshops are at different levels than the teaching of Joel, which is at a different level. Certainly, you would have to admit that the teaching of Joel is at a different level than the teaching of Robert.
Right.
Because Joel's teaching 50,000 students and Robert's teaching 12.
Right.
You know, you can talk higher.
Right. Because I went from Robert to Joel, and I'm like, wanted to go back to Robert.
But it's important to know the letter of truth as well. See, many people listening to Robert, he's so high that you know, it's beyond the point of practical mysticism. You know, Joel is at the point where he says being a mystic is the most practical way to live your life, and backs it up. And Robert would say, who's living what life?
Right.
And just blow the whole thing off, you know. So, sorry. Grab a couple of pillows from under the table there before you come over.
hierarchy is that I feel the hierarchy within my own journey because I was at a space of peace. Now I'm peaceful now, but not like it was. And I want to get back there, and the only way to get back there is to not do anything.
Perhaps.
And so, well, no, I know what I need to do. We talked about it the other day. But it just feels like once you're there, I just want to stay there forever. And so that's kind of a hierarchy within my own consciousness. But it's not the consciousness, it's just my false perception. So would that be like a level of consciousness contrary to the one consciousness?
Well, see, we get so tied up in words. I mean, it's all part of the one consciousness.
Okay.
You're wherever you are, and you know, it's not like you went somewhere and slipped back. It's like you went somewhere and then more became, more was revealed. It's an endless process until it ends. It's a long process. It's a long process.
Let me write that down.
It's a long process of, we attain a level, if you will, and we're comfortable there. And while we rest there, things go on within us, and more stuff gets brought up and such like, and before long we're not comfortable there anymore. And the reason that we're not comfortable is that we still have false beliefs, or any of the long list, we still have desires and likes and dislikes and stuff like that, things we want, which doesn't keep yanking us back and keeping us out, as long as you have interest in something out there, you're going to get yanked back. So more stuff comes up, which we have to deal with. And sometimes we discover that we've had a truth that's pretty good. Like if we really understood metaphysics, we could be living a pretty good life, but eventually it's going to fail because that's not the ultimate truth. And when something like that fails, you have no idea what the truth is, but what you believe isn't working. And now you're in a deep spot. This is what's called the dark night of the soul. And what you have to do is empty out all of your old beliefs without any idea of what the new ones are. But you have to empty out the old ones to make room for the new ones. And this is why dark nights of the soul are so painful. You have to just stop and just drop all your beliefs and walk into what Robert calls divine ignorance, walk into the I don't have any idea, show me. And it's very scary. And of course it's scary depending on how human you still are, because scary means that you're afraid. And of course the fears are that I won't get what I want, or I will get what I don't want, or I'll lose what I have. So as long as you've got those guys laying around, you're going to go through this process. But every time you move, you have a new set of truths which are closer to correct. They're higher truths, even though if you can verbalize them, they're not the truth, but they're higher truths. And so your life will work better. But what will happen is it'll still feel comfortable, and you'll get comfortable, and you'll get complacent, and new stuff will come up, and here we go again.
It feels like repeated levels of, I thought I knew something, and then now I know I know nothing. Followed by thinking you know something, followed by another, oh, and I really know nothing. In a sort of a level ascent,
Yes.
but continuing to find out I know nothing about that thing I thought I knew.
Yep. And see, if the one side of the process is continuing to discover that you know nothing about this too, and then you have a new truth that also isn't the truth because it's got words in it, and therefore it makes sense to you, and therefore it's not it. And you also still have over here on the other hand this list of things you want and don't want. Okay? And you can keep giving up the things you want and don't want. And, there's a wonderful book out called Spiritual Materialism, where the person's gotten sophisticated enough to stop wanting material things. Now he wants to be holy or saintly or whatever, And Trungpa Chogyam's point is that it's no different. It's just a little higher level of substitution, but spiritual materialism is a really nice name for the book. He's exactly right. On the desire side, Barbara Moll says, make a list of everything you love in human love, everything you hate, everything you fear, and everything you desire. Okay? Now these 4 lists, if they're complete, are the lists of all the things that have you tied to your humanhood. This is what you're interested in. I don't want this, and I do want this, and I don't want him, and I do want her, and and I'm afraid of this, and hope for that, and love my puppy dog, and on, and these are all the things that are holding you back. And if you can recognize that about each of these lists, and if you can empty the lists, that will get rid of the desire fear problem. And if you'll just stop thinking at all, that will get rid of the continuing to have new levels of truth that are right for a while, but which turn out also not to be true. But the way out of that is the only way out of that is to not think, to drop thinking. And interestingly enough, when the lists are empty and you stop thinking, there it is.
Right. But then that's huge. In my meditation, I used to have outside and then around, and then I'd go up over here, and when I was in the universe, that was fun. And then that quit working, so then I did these shapes. I went vertical and the triangle and then the circle, and then that just went out to the universe. And then that quit working. But the whole point of what I'm saying is that experience was a thought process.
That's all in mind.
Which was not it.
That's all in mind.
But when I hit apparent something that was just so huge and scared the heck out of me, that's when there's no thought. It was just...
Yeah.
Yep. Right, which is huge. And then I just want to run back into the shapes and colors.
Yep.
That's like that experience of how when you listen to Robert long enough, you feel like this leaves me with nothing to hold on to. Like I have there's nothing to grasp.
Yep. And it can feel like you're being dropped into it, and it can be frightening. I remember when Rashneesh first dropped me into it. I don't know whether he dropped all of us or just me, but it was the first time he'd been coming out every morning and talking to us, and there was a rigmarole that they went through. They played some music, and he greeted everybody, and he sat, and they played some music, and this and that went on, And then it would come to a stop, and there'd be a pause, and he would start talking, and it was like tick, 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 and he was on, and he would start the day's talk. And he went into silence at one point while I was there, and he went tick, tick. And there was this huge silence. It just went, and I felt my body was falling, and I was, this amazing silence. He just dropped us all, I assume, into this silence. And he had been saying for a long time that when there were enough people in the crowd who could go into the silence, we'd go into the silence. But if there's one less, then what happens when you get quiet is it gets disturbed, and it falls apart. But if there's enough people who know the silent, then when you get into the silence drops, But he dropped us into it, and it was, my feeling was off a cliff. Shock, fear. But then you never doubt that there is a silence.
But then you went back to it.
Huh?
But then you want to go back, but then it's scary.
And you work.
And then you have to do all this work.
But it's only scary if you think there's a you. It's only scary if you have a misidentification. If you're not thinking, then there's no you to be afraid. I requires thinking.
So what is, I'm kind of in that place of the old beliefs don't work. I don't recognize any new beliefs at the moment. I mean, as far as what's going on, I'm quitting one career and going to teaching. But I'm getting a lot of things. That's what I'm saying is not helping. I'm getting a lot of anxiety when I'm getting physical sensations of heart racing or what have you. And what do you do when you're in that dark place? It's not like the old dark place where it's like, let's go out and beer or whatever. It's just a very...
No, but treat it like a process and learn the next level of truth. Grab Joel tapes, listen to Joel tapes. And I keep telling people, if you listen to tapes of any spiritual teacher, and Joel's a good example, if he's talking, listen to a Joel tape and see if he's talking to you. If he's talking to you and you listen to 8 or 10 Joel tapes, then anytime there's a consciousness on the tape.
Yeah.
And anytime you feel anxiety, you can put on the tape, and in about 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you'll be into that consciousness, which is lifting you out of the material consciousness into the consciousness where Joel is at, and that's the quickest way I know out of anything, out of material is to use Joel or to use Robert. And I recommend that people keep a tape by their bedside so that when they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and the little eye jumps off the headboard of the bed and attacks them, that you just flip on a tape, Put on the earphones if you have a spouse and put on the tape and listen to Robert or Joel. And I know some people have done that for years with amazing success. And, the man is speaking spiritual truth. He is speaking a level of truth about metaphysics and mysticism, and that truth certainly is a useful thing to have in the process of allaying your false desires and allaying your fears and allaying your sense of humanhood.
I get that. If I listen to Robert for half an hour, I am okay. But I think I'm straddling these two worlds. Like as soon as I go back to the external worlds, I freak out. And if I can live with a CD on my head or live with meditation right now, everything's fine. But I guess my ego wants to say, we still got to live in this other...
That's what the whole 10 classes were before you guys got here. It was called Living Between Two Worlds, and that's exactly what it's about, it's head in the clouds and feet in the mud. The fact is that we keep getting yanked back. As long as we have any false beliefs or any desires or any loves or any hates or any fears, or, they yank us back, and we have to do specific work to correct these beliefs. It's called script class and book class, or hearing the word of truth for some people, and we have to correct the lies.
So it's about using the tool, just surrendering that is this process.
Yeah. It's blue collar work. It's clocking in and clocking out. There's nothing wonderful about this at all. Diane Dixon brought that from some person she heard sharing. Meditation is blue collar work. If you want to get good at meditation, treat it like a blue collar. Clock in at 7:45 every morning and clock out at 7:53 if you're doing 8-hour meditations. But show up, clock in, clock out, and whether or not you have any results or not, build up the practice. And all of this is the same thing. You do the work. And it's all available, there's hundreds of books and hundreds of tapes, and there's my CDs and there's other CDs, and Joel CDs, and there's Joel books and tapes. And,
The thing that's helped me the most, specifically with what you just shared, is to recognize that my fear is not about such stuff, you know? It's a result of my thinking.
mm-hmm.
So I have to change the way I think, what I'm holding in my mind. So that's why holding the truth in my mind changes my experience.
Yeah, if you understand the basic principle that we use around here, one of the 2 or 3 basic principles, which is that my experience is the outpicturing of my beliefs,
Right.
then if we can change my beliefs, the experience changes. So that's the reason for learning the letter of truth, for hearing. That's the reason that listening to Joel, getting high listening to Joel works better than getting high, dropping acid.
Right.
Because you're getting some truth rather than just lifted, you know.
Well, the thing with the books is, in the book, I get the knowledge, but I don't get the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I can sit here and tell you all kinds of great stuff. We had actually a really phenomenal Tuesday night a couple months ago with a very book-read person that pretty much said all these different great books that they had read. And I was like, oh, what experience do you have? And I didn't mean that like in a bad way, but so I find more of the meditation in the silence teaches me more than the experience when I am in this world. Because when I'm in this world, and I go back into meditation, I realize, oh, well, that was a false event.
Mm-hmm.
And so when these guys write all these books, then if I was to read the book, I'm just gaining knowledge to create an experience.
Well, you need to read some book probably in order to learn what the truth is.
Right.
In order to get your head set right, because most of us start out with our heads so full of molasses that we have no idea what the truth is, and we also have no ability because of the molasses to have a spiritual insight or intuition or revelation. So you need to learn, most people need to learn some amount of the letter of truth. It's sort of like thinning out the molasses. So that needs to happen, but if you have read and understood Joel Goldsmith, who's about as complete as you can get on the how it works stuff about metaphysics, there's certainly no reason to go read the other 150 metaphysicians around who have perhaps equal stature. All they'll do is say it differently and confuse you because everybody has a vocabulary which is determined by his student body. And similarly for higher truth, for the truth like with a yani or a true master. Buddha and Jesus said exactly the same thing, and the words have very little in common because Buddha had a background of 1,000 years of tradition of the Vedanta, and Jesus was essentially dealing with a bunch of tribal rabble, with no spiritual tradition of anything to speak of at all. And so the language is very different because the language is what the disciples, what the students, the audience can hear. So be real careful about going from yani to yani, from master to master, because it can be very confusing. Find your master and hear the truth. And I found Robert, and I've had no need to go find another one or hear anybody else, or there's no point to study. Now it's a matter of dropping into the consciousness. There's no reason to go hear other takes on that because it's all nonsense anyway. So seeking they call them seekers, people seeking truth, seeking the, seeking can be a endless game. You can be a seeker for lifetimes, and until you find your teacher, that's what you have to do. But when you find your master and you know it, then you sit down and stay there and trust that person and do what they say. And with Robert, I was with Robert regularly for 7 or 8 years. I don't think I ever asked him a question because there was no reason to ask any questions, I asked Rashneesh a question, and he said, "Every time I answer your question, your mind generates 10 more." He says, "I'm not here to answer your questions. I'm here to get you to stop asking questions." And I heard that way down all the way through me, and realized that asking questions and getting answers is, being in the consciousness is what counts. It doesn't matter what they're saying. But that's true when you can experience being in consciousness. Until then, you need to ask questions. You just need to do what you're doing where you're at. Nobody's doing anything wrong.
It's like when Robert says you can't be any place that you're not. You can't pretend yourself to be in a different spot than you're in.
That's right.
And if you believe you're in a body in the world, then you have to act as if
That's right.
this stuff is important and needs to be taken care of.
Because that's your experience.
Because my thinker can go off about the fact that I'm thinking. And that
Right.
I'm, having this experience, and the truth is it's not this, but, like fault and blame can come in with, a lot of thoughts in that. Like supposed to be's and should be's.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know we've read about this intellectual truth, and it's not my experience right now, so that's just got to take.
Yeah, we had a case, I think it was last week. The question was, are those flowers real? And the answer is no, but the answer is also yes. Those flowers are as real as anything in the entire universe. Okay? And if you have a body, they're very real. And they're not real. They're not what they, the better answer would be that they're not what they appear to be. When people usually ask, are those flowers that real, they mean, is there a material entity out there that has independent existence? And in that sense, no, they're not real. There is no material entity out there that has its own independent existence. But,
Can I ask a human question? Are they real or fake?
they grew.
They're not plastic flowers?
They're not plastic, but that doesn't have anything to do with it.
No, I know.
But I forget the point I was making, except
They don't have a material identity.
yeah, no, the point is that you need to operate from where you're operating from. Is the point. It's real nice to think they're not real, but if that's not your experience, then it's not your experience. And in a very real sense, there certainly is real as anything else in the universe. And they're no more real than the bouquet you dreamed about last night. So, where do you get off? You start from where you are. When you were in the dream last night, those were real. And for the person in the dream, they had better act as if they were, Pretty though, aren't they?
Nice.
Yeah. Danny strikes again.
I've been working with trying to, I've developed like a series of systems throughout the day to kind of wake myself up to more specific reality, not believing appearances, not, that then lead me to judgments that support my concepts, that make me believe in my own little lie. And I guess the opposite would be just God being God all the time. No conscious thinking. Do you have any other ideas about how to further that experience?
Whatever technique for you brings you back to the point as often as possible is a very good technique. It's like the hourly 5-second meditation, better than the 10 minutes at the start of the day. Whatever brings you back as often as you can is the point. The alternative approach is to address the question of who Joanne is and who I am is, and